Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us here for this webinar. This evening, we'll be talking about your emotional well-being and how pancreatic cancer can impact this. We know this is something that can affect everyone differently and will likely change throughout your experience too. We're here this evening to talk through the different emotions you may experience, share some tips on boosting your well-being, and letting you know where you can access further support. We'll also be talking about peer support and how you can access that if you'd be interested in talking to others who just get it. As a reminder, this session's for anyone affected by pancreatic cancer, whether you've had a diagnosis yourself or you're supporting a friend or family member who has the diagnosis. This session is not aimed at health professionals, but there is a wealth of information on the PCUK website, including upcoming specialist webinars in February and March this year. My name is Lea Booth, and I'm a specialist nurse here at Pancreatic Cancer UK. Now, with the housekeeping over, and just before we begin, I'd like to introduce Simon Walker and Tara White, who will be talking to us this evening. I work alongside Simon on our support line here at Pancreatic Cancer UK, and we're delighted to be welcoming Tara White, who is the centre head at Maggie, Swansea. That was a very brief introduction, so this is a perfect timing for me to invite Simon and Tara to tell us a little bit more about themselves. So over to you, Simon, first.
Hi, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name's Simon. I've been here at Pancreatic UK for almost 18 months now. And before that, I worked as a specialist nurse in palliative care, and that was both in a hospice and community setting. I did that for about 16 years, so that's the bulk of my experience working with people with pancreatic cancer. So I'll hand over to Tara.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me join this evening. My name's Tara and I'm the centre head at Maggie's based in Swansea. And you may have heard of Maggie's, but we are a network of centres across the UK. I've been with Maggie's for about 8 years now, and my background is in radiotherapy. Yeah, that's it. I should also say, actually, I work as a cancer support specialist as well here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, both of you, for that short introduction. Okay then, so we want to begin this evening by getting to know you a little bit more and about your experiences so far. Wanted to ask you about what areas of your life have been impacted by pancreatic cancer. Some of the options that we're going to list and for you to choose from. I thought I'd just give a little brief outline about what that might mean. So, emotionally, it might include feelings such as sadness, fear, or anger. Mentally, or your mental health, which relates to the mind, thinking, and emotions. Conditions such as anxiety and depression, perhaps. Physically, so you might have symptoms that you experience or a change in your body image that you're not expecting. Financially, and that could be a loss of income, perhaps, or just the expense of hospital visits. Spiritually, having a sense of connection, be that through religion or through something you enjoy doing like poetry, music and art, for examples. And also other, as we know there may be other areas too. So you should see a poll popping up on your screen where you can share, or you can share your experience in the chat too. And I'll just give you a moment. Thank you so much for answering so honestly there. A very high proportion of you feel that the impact of pancreatic cancer has affected your life, along with the mental health as well. In fact, all of them are scoring quite highly. It's what we hear a lot of on the support line. I'm not sure whether Simon would agree and whether Tara has any thoughts.
Yeah, I would certainly say from the support line, Lee, that the emotional impact of pancreatic cancer is huge, and that's obviously why we've put this webinar on tonight, because we see it frequently that it's just a huge impact on every aspect of your life, but that the emotional side in particular, and we'll go into more detail later as to why that might be.
Yes, just to echo that, is exactly that in Maggie's is that's what we're dealing with every day, is predominantly about that emotional and psychological impact of a diagnosis of cancer has, and whether that be right at the start or 2 years afterwards, it's always the prominent challenge.
Absolutely, yeah. So following on from this, we'd be interested to know if you have accessed any support specifically for your well-being so far. You may or may not have, or you may wish to, but are unsure about where you'll find this. Again, there should be a poll, or you can share your experience in the chat. Two answers here. You either have or you haven't accessed support for your well-being so far. So no, not all of you have, but there are a majority that have accessed some support for your well-being, which is great to hear. But for those that haven't, we can go into a bit more detail throughout this session today. Might put you in the direction of where you can get support from for your well-being. Okay then. And finally, are you in touch with other people who can relate to you and offer support? This could be through a support group of friends or family you know who have experienced something similar. Again, it's another poll with yes or no. If you wouldn't mind answering that one, thank you. Again, a high proportion, or 3/4 of people perhaps haven't, or you aren't in touch with anyone else going through something similar. So we can talk about something called circles a little bit later on, and other support that you might be able to get from there, which is brilliant. Thank you. I really do appreciate for you sharing your experience with us there. But now we wanted to talk about how does pancreatic cancer tend to affect people's well-being. So at this point, probably be a good time for me to ask Tara, did you want to start us off with thinking about the different areas of well-being that can be affected when you have a cancer diagnosis?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really important to start with the fact that there is absolutely no right way to feel in this situation. I often hear with our visitors here, Maggie's, people will say, "It's the way I'm feeling normal." And that's the question we get asked all the time. And there is no normal reaction. Some people will feel an absolute sort of overwhelming amount of emotion, be it anger, sadness, anxiety. They're sort of questioning of why, while I might have other people coming in saying I feel nothing, and that feels really strange, or they might perceive that reaction to be an unusual one. But the reality is that there is no normal or right way, I should say, to respond in this situation. In terms of some of the common sort of ways that this could affect our emotional well-being, again, I think important to highlight, it's not just how we feel emotionally. We can feel a reaction to this sort of situation in life physically as well. We can have very, very physical responses to a stressful situation like that. And that might be suddenly you start noticing that you're really tense all the time. You might think, well, my shoulders are like really sort of knotted and clenching your jaw, maybe not sleeping as well, feeling like you're having palpitations. Sometimes people get upset stomachs. So our emotional well-being is so completely linked to how we react physically. And then similarly, that can then have an impact on other aspects of your life. So, how you feel, how you interact with those around you. So socially, it can impact you. You might feel like you withdraw from people, or you might feel like you start leaning on communities that maybe you hadn't in the past. It might affect how you think and feel spiritually as well. And it can also have an impact on you in a very practical way, which then can feed into stress and anxiety further. So by that, I mean, affect how your work, affect your working life, consequently affect your financial situation, maybe affect, as I say, day to day, like practical things like maybe doing the school run, or, doing your housekeeping tasks and keeping your home going. And all of that then, again, can feed back into how you feel emotionally if you're not able to do those normal tasks, or if those normal day-to-day things are being impacted. So there's quite a lot in one go.
Yeah, thank you. It's really informative. Yeah. And Simon, in your experience supporting people with pancreatic cancer, would you say all these areas can be impacted as well?
Absolutely, and I would to echo what Tara said. I think thankfully we talk more and more in terms of us being whole beings. So there isn't that kind of mind and body split that perhaps there used to be in terms of how you feel physically and how you feel emotionally and mentally, because the two are completely enmeshed and they affect each other. How you feel emotionally can make you feel things physically and vice versa. So it can be a very confusing time when you've had a diagnosis and you're trying to deal with something like pancreatic cancer in terms of what all these different things actually mean, especially if you're trying to search for a meaning and to try and understand what's happening to you. I think in terms of experience of talking to people on the support line and nursing people prior to this, one of the issues with pancreatic cancer is because it can be so difficult to diagnose and it's often diagnosed late, it brings with it quite extremes of emotions sometimes, in that people can have struggled for months feeling ill and knowing that they are ill, and the people around them know that they are ill, but they can't find a reason, and they have tests and they go to and fro from medical professionals, and then they finally get a diagnosis, and it can be a relief, and that can be a confusing thing for somebody who's with them to understand, that they feel relief that they've got a diagnosis, but it's a relief that they're validated that they were right in the first place. But then that can quickly turn to anger and frustration, because why did it take so long to find out what had happened? So you can end up in this real kind of tumult of emotions. And if you are somebody who was caught early and you can have surgery, then that's life-changing surgery. It's has a huge impact on your life, not just going through it at the time, but what then happens thereafter. So I think in terms of how it affects you, it's key, as Tara said, that you understand it affects every part of you, your spiritual being, your physical health, all those symptoms that come with the disease can affect how you feel emotionally, lack of sleep, fatigue. All that will then impact on your social interactions, intimacy, sexuality, how you are with those close to you, how you are with those people around you, how you interact with your children, your grandchildren, and how you navigate that and we hear this a lot. People, I was playing tennis last month and now I'm here. I was on holiday 2 months ago and now I'm here. And how that then impacts on the future that you had envisaged for yourself, the hopes and the things that you were building up for that future. Where do you go with all that? So I think it's just huge how it impacts on people.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Simon and Tara, for that. As we've discussed quite a few elements of your well-being there, we can appreciate that they are, as mentioned, often connected and will likely impact each other, as it's shown on the slide that's coming up. So we know that all of the pancreatic cancer can tend to affect people's well-being, emotionally and mentally, their spirituality, their financial way they are, and their physical being as well. They all interlink and have a huge effect on people's well-being. Of course, this evening we're here to really focus on emotional well-being. So with that in mind, we'll now delve a little deeper into thinking about the different emotions people affected by pancreatic cancer tend to experience. Now, Simon and Tara, this will be different for everyone, I would expect, but are there common emotions that are experienced that are different to perhaps what we've just recently spoken about in the last section?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in if that's okay, Simon. Definitely, definitely lots of common emotions, and some of which we both just touched on. But I've just seen the comment from Ariane, and I think that brings us to highlight the feeling of isolation. you know, what you're saying, Ariane, about there being so little information out there, that instantly just gives you a sense of being even more alone in a really scary situation than you are likely to already feel by being diagnosed with an illness that others around you aren't experiencing. And again, even with a lot of information, isolation is still a big factor for a lot of people. But I think it's a really, again, common difficulty that people experience. And obviously, Simon, you'll probably hear this a lot, being on the support line and supporting people with pancreatic cancer specifically. Obviously, we support all cancers here, so it's a bit different for me.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Isolation is up there, certainly. And I think, again, because pancreatic cancer is one of those cancers that can be caught late and can move quickly, you can feel isolated, not only because you're trying to find information and trying to find support and often trying to find answers, but you're doing that with the background of perhaps knowing that there's not a lot of time. So it adds to the stress of needing to find ways of connecting and understanding what's happening to you. I would say another thing that comes across often is a feeling of a loss of control. That you get swept along by this, particularly after diagnosis, that you're not in control of when the appointments happen, you're not in control of when the scans happen, and sometimes you're having to wait, and that can be extremely frustrating, again, when time is of the essence. You're not in control of what your body's doing. If you're caring for somebody with pancreatic cancer, you can't control any of it, and you're trying to help somebody and sit alongside them and support them whilst knowing that they're going through something you can't experience. And there can be that real frustration of wanting to push things and push things through quickly, and that sense of pushing against the system, which can feel that it's obstructing you at times. And I think that wanting and needing information is key, and we do hear that a lot of people feeling that they're in the dark, they're a bit lost, they don't really know who to ring or what should be going on and when and how. And I think it's important to understand that things like cancer happen to you, and you don't become a different person at that point. You're still you, and you bring with you your life experience. You bring with you your coping strategies that you've used throughout your life. And people deal with this very differently. Some people want lots of information and they want to know everything, and others don't. And you kind of fall on this spectrum. And again, for people supporting somebody with pancreatic cancer, you might be at a different end of that spectrum to the person going through it. And it's key to try and understand each other in terms of where you're coming from, so that you can support each other where you are and where you need to be.
There are other emotions as well that I thought of. So things like anxiety and fear, which we have touched on a little bit. You can be distressed or angry, confusion, sometimes feeling overwhelmed, hopelessness, and it's not just the emotions of, saying just, those emotions are all valid and true, can be for happen to people or someone that's living with pancreatic cancer, but it can be for those experienced as well, the loved ones, that they can feel those emotions too. And do you think that emotions differ depending on the different experience that people do have?
I think it's really, important to as you just done, to highlight the emotions for those who are supporting someone with pancreatic cancer. And they can be different emotions, but it's a lot of the same, but experienced differently. So like Simon talked about loss of control, obviously absolutely huge one for the person going through it, for all the reasons that you stated. And for that person closest to them, there's all of those reasons, plus then that inability to do what we all sort of, our natural instinct is to do in these situations, which is to care and look after someone when you don't know what the treatment is or you don't know enough information because there isn't the information might not be there for you of how to support that person best. And then that person also doesn't know how to look after them. It can be really, really challenging between those two, between in that family dynamic or that relationship, to then be able to support each other whilst both feeling a loss of control in different ways. And similarly, again, going back to isolation, although you might have a huge family of support around you, a huge network of support around you, for that person closest to you, there's that isolation for them as well of, actually, who do I talk to about the things I don't want to talk to you about because I don't want to worry you or add on to your plate. And similarly, if you're the one going through the diagnosis, it's vice versa. I don't want to add on to their worry. I know that they're worried about me. So where do I go for this? Where do I go and put this worry, and who do I talk to? So, I think all the same emotions are there, but experienced in very different ways. And then how you manage that can be challenging because, again, that can be different as well.
And change over time, I guess, as well.
Yeah, it can. I think it's a really good point, Tara, just to add to it is that protection that we do with each other. So, and again, we hear this a lot, and I would see this a lot when I worked in palliative care, is that when you have a diagnosis like this, a devastating diagnosis, you want to protect each other from more pain and more hurt. So often the person with the diagnosis doesn't sometimes want to say exactly how they feel because they don't want to worry the people that are looking after them or make them upset. And the person that is caring for that person doesn't want to ask questions because they don't want to cause upset or hurt. And you can end up with this, both wanting the same thing, but not always communicating that with each other. And often, not always, but often, if you can sit down and have that conversation about, I'm really worried about saying what I think because I don't want to upset you, and vice versa, you can come to a point, and it may need a health professional or somebody trained to sit with you to do that, because it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do when you're very close. But to be able to do that can have a big impact. Even more so when you start thinking about, how do you communicate with children, for example? How do you break bad news to children? How do you involve them in this? How do you help them feel part of what's happening? How do you not isolate them through wanting to protect them? How do you help them maintain that connection? And I think for me that would tie into things like intimacy and how do we maintain intimacy through something like this? How do you maintain those human connections with people and not lose it because you're hurting too much or you're withdrawn to the point that you don't feel you can do it? So I think, yeah, they're the sorts of things I would add to the what seemed like quite a depressing list. But I think for me, it's important to talk about these things, because if you bottle them up and you don't, it can lead to problems. But I would add to that, not everybody likes talking, and that's okay. Not everybody likes to spill everything out there, and that's who you are. So it's working with you. And I'd encourage people to, when they're dealing with health professionals in particular, and you're wanting to build a rapport with somebody, is tell them how you like to communicate and how you like to do things, so that, we as your advocates can work with you.
So true, yeah, great. Thank you both so much. So again, we'll bring up some information here, and as Simon and Tara have mentioned, this will vary for everyone, and it's totally normal to experience a range of emotions that change with you over time. So we can see, we touched on these quite in a bit of detail, common emotions to experience, but each person is individual, and you can feel and experience the emotions that are true to you. And it doesn't mean not one size fits all. So it could be that you have completely different emotions that to those that are written down here, but these are some of the most common that we see. or hear about when talking to people with pancreatic cancer or those affected by. So, now we've talked about those different emotions you may experience, what I'm sure you're all interested in hearing from Simon and Tara is, what's some tips on boosting your well-being? And continue to think about how those different areas impact each other. Tara, do you have any actions and key tips that you'd like to share on how we boost our well-being?
Absolutely. I think, again, the important to start off with is nothing needs to be a huge gesture of I'm doing something drastically to improve myself or to make things better. Often I think a trap we can fall into is thinking I have to go and do an hour's yoga session, or I have to go and enroll myself on a retreat for 2 days. And you know, all of these things are just not accessible and not realistic, especially when you're supporting someone or you're going through treatment. We can support our well-being with really, really small gestures of self-care throughout the day or throughout the week. And these can be things I might go to, and I said this last year and I'll always say it, is make a hot drink and go and stand out in your garden while you drink it, and just have that 10 minutes of having your cup of tea or coffee or whatever, being in nature. Even if you live on a busy road, it's just getting outside and having some fresh air and feeling the elements on you. It's an instant grounding tool, and it's a way of giving yourself 10 minutes that's just for you. And that, you know, that's 10 minutes out of your day. It's not a huge gesture. If you're not feeling 100%, you could go out and sit on a bench. You know, you can bring your blanket out and whatever you need just to be comfortable and not you know, make yourself feel worse, because obviously that's not going to be helpful. But that's something really small that's accessible to most people. Of course, if you can get yourself to a yoga class, that's fantastic. But if you can't, there's so many free resources on YouTube where you can do 5 minutes of yoga. And again, that might be all that is accessible to you and realistic for you at that point. But that's still 5 minutes of self-care that you've given yourself. So I always like to just sort of stress it doesn't need to be this big thing that we kind of maybe have a picture of in our heads of what well-being looks like. Having said that, if you can get yourself to a class or an activity that you really enjoy, then absolutely do that. Do the things that bring you joy, bring you a sense of relaxation or a sense of calm, or help ground you, help you feel less anxious. So these can be things like exercise. It can be maybe going out for a walk with your dog or with a friend, or, you know, just taking yourself out, just again to be in nature. It could be having a bath. It could be treating yourself to, you know, a book or a piece of music that you've really wanted, or sitting and listening to your favorite music just for 5 minutes. For some people, it's more of a creative outlook. So it might be creating a piece of art, and that could be therapeutic coloring, you know, coloring books. It could be collaging, or it could just be scribbling on a piece of scrap paper. Again, it doesn't need to be a masterpiece that you're creating. It's just an outlet, or a different outlet for your emotion. And I know something which is a lot of people find helpful is journaling and writing. And again, it doesn't need to be a masterpiece. It doesn't need to be beautifully written. Nobody needs to see it. It's just another form of expressing how you're feeling and getting it out in a different way. So yeah, that's again a lot of information, and there's lots of different sort of avenues that you can go off on. But there are a few sort of starting points. I don't know if you want to jump in, Simon.
Yeah,
No, I'd agree with all of that, and it's the kind of thing we talk about on the support line, and I would, you know, previously talk to people about. I think that there can be an element of readjustment in terms of what your capabilities are, and those capabilities will change over time. So there's an acceptance there, which can be, it's easy for me to say that, but it can be quite hard to accept what's happening to you. But as you readjust and accept what you can and can't do, it's the things that you love and previously brought you joy, you can still do them, but you might have to do them in a slightly different way. And it's just thinking how I might have to walk the dog for a shorter period of time. I used to enjoy, I don't know, going to the cafe with my friends, but I'm not going to be able to walk there anymore, so I'll drive. Or I love nature, but I can't get out so much, so I'll go and sit in the garden, or I'll get somebody to help me so that I can be outside in some way. One of the things I used to it happened quite a lot, and it was often people, and I laugh because I kind of you think somebody who's quite physical and is used to doing what they want when they want and how they want. When they can't do that anymore, can be really frustrating. It affects your sense of self. It affects how you see yourself. And I used to have conversations with people about things like wheelchairs, and often the response was, "I'm not getting in a wheelchair. There's no way I'm going out in a wheelchair." But actually, it's seeing those adjustments as a means of still doing the things that you love, but in a slightly different way. Um, Things like journaling can help if you enjoy writing, sort of writing about how you feel. Um, Taking pictures with family and friends and children, and sort of creating memories and things that you can enjoy. And I think, like Tara said, just it's the small things really. We're swamped on social media with big gesture stuff, aren't we? That your bucket lists and things, and they're massive. And often, if your well-being is affected to the point where you're feeling pretty lousy, you're not going to be able to do those big things anyway. Even if you physically were able, you're not going to be in the right emotional state. So little things, small chunks of time during a day where you do something for you, you do something with somebody that means something to you together, so that you can have that connection and intimacy, I think is really important.
And I think going back to sort of loss of control, a way of sort of looking after our well-being in that sense is focusing on the small things that are in your control. And so sometimes it might be bigger things, but it's very easy for us to be overwhelmed by all of this entire new world of things that is frightening. And like we've said, we can't control it, we can't change it, that we miss then, okay, take a step back, what can I control? And that is all within your daily routines, all things that you perhaps overlook because it's just part of life and it's sort of autopilot. But if you sort of take a step back and look at your day, well, you know, of all the small routines that you can do, the small choices you make, that can help. I know not overly, not entirely, but it can help a little, just give back a sense of there are still things that are within my control, and focusing in on that rather than that whole overwhelming other world that's going on that then starts to swamp us really quickly, and that's very easily done. And I think perhaps just thinking about those that are closest to us and that might be supporting somebody with cancer, is that making sure you're taking a break too. Because I think, again, the focus is always, tends to be focusing on the person going through it, that person closest, looking after, manning the appointments, asking the questions, is often then not getting that time to take a break. And again, practically speaking, it might not be possible to take half a day or a few hours away, because that's just not the reality of your situation. You might have kids or grandkids and other things as well. But it is important to take a break. And again, even if that break is only 10 minutes in the day, make sure that you're taking that and allow yourself to accept help when it's being offered. I think that's the other thing. It can be really difficult to let go. Again, going back to control, letting go of some control to allow someone else in to help you to take that break and look after yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. It's that self-care for all involved is vital, because this is such an emotionally and physically demanding thing to do, to care for somebody and support them, and the drive to do that, the drive to be there all the time, to almost be on call 24/7 and do everything that you possibly can is very strong. But in order to be the best support for somebody else, you also have to step back and support yourself. and you in order for you to be able to cope and manage, you also need time out and a bit of space to breathe. So yeah, absolutely, that's something I've had many conversations about with people, and there's a guilt attached to doing that, which can be hard to overcome sometimes. To allow yourself to do it, it can feel quite guilty, because I should be with that person, I should be doing something, I should be helping in some way, but actually you are in a sense, because you'll be a little bit more refreshed, a little bit less tired, a little bit more emotionally capable than you were before, if you can do that for yourself.
Yeah, so true. Do you think there's anything people should avoid doing?
Good question.
Mm.
I would avoid putting pressure on yourself to be something or do something that you perceive to be what you should be doing. Actually, just pull it back. If you're thinking I should be, instantly that to me would be no, because already it's either a chore or it's a potentially unrealistic forecast that you're about to put out. So try to keep focused on what's your situation and what you can do to help yourself or your loved one or your family as a unit. The minute you start kind of saying the shoulds, you're kind of setting yourself up for a difficult situation, and by that I mean, again, a lot of people will hear they'll say, oh, I know I should be exercising, I know I should be doing more. Well, not necessarily. What you need to do is what you need to do. So what's going to make you feel good, that's the question. If it's going and have a lie down, go and have a lie down. If it's going out with the kids, then that's what you need to do. But putting any sort of unrealistic pressure on yourself, it's not going to help your mental well-being and subsequently your physical well-being.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, both, again. So just to share with you a summary of those actions, which you may find useful. You can see some examples on screen here of different actions that can help to boost your well-being. There's quite a lot of information on there, so please, this will be sent to you later on, in the coming days, if not later this evening. So, I think one of the key perhaps parts is talking to others and sharing your experience. And we can talk about this more a little bit later on. So I'm sure we've touched on most of the things that are here. Perhaps we didn't touch so much on financial well-being, but if you did want to talk in more detail about that, please don't hesitate in calling the support line, and we could happily go through any financial well-being concerns that you do have, or try and help you. Likewise, Maggie's as well can help you with that too. So to bring to life some of what we've just been talking about, we thought it might be useful to take you through an exercise live. It's up to you whether you join in. There's certainly no pressure to do so. And Tara, I'd love to hand over to you for this now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Lea. So this is a really simple exercise. You can do it absolutely anywhere, which is why it's so helpful to practice this. It's called a grounding technique. It's really useful when you're in a situation maybe where you can start to feel yourself getting a bit panicked, but equally really good in situations maybe where you just start to notice your mind starting to wander, you're becoming, you're going down maybe a bit of a thought trap, you're starting to feel a bit anxious, or maybe when you wake up at night and can't get back to sleep. So what I'd ask you to do is, if you feel comfortable to, just close your eyes or sort of rest your gaze down and just take a few deep breaths in and out, and just give you a moment to do that. And then when you're ready, I want you to quietly, to yourself, just notice 5 things that you can see around you. That could be shapes and colours, it can be objects. And then notice 4 things that you can feel. And then notice 3 things that you can hear. Then 2 things that you can smell. And lastly, 1 thing that you can taste. And then finally, take another slow breath in and out. And bring your attention gently back into the room. So this, as I said, it's just a simple grounding exercise, and it can be helpful when anytime you're experiencing any sense of anxiety or overwhelm, or you start to notice those feelings starting to rise. Nobody needs to know you're doing it. And you can do it anyway. But it's a really sort of simple, handy tool to have in your toolbox, as we refer to a lot here. Yeah, so hopefully that was helpful for some of you.
Thank you for guiding us through that exercise, Tara. Hope everyone watching found it taking a moment there useful. While we hope this evening's session will be helpful, we really encourage you to seek support throughout your experience and know that some additional one-to-one support may be useful at times. So we wanted to take some time now to talk you through the different services available to you. First off, we have our support line, which is open Monday to Friday, where you can talk to Simon or myself or Lynn or one of the other specialist nurse colleagues, whether it's practical support or help in preparing for an appointment or just a shoulder to lean on. We're here to support you. You can also talk to us via email or on WhatsApp, especially if sending just a quick message any time of the day or night suits you better. We also have a huge range of information available on our website. You can read through it online or order this for free, so you can read through it in your own time at home. As we have Tara here today, we also wanted to talk about the support available there. Tara, are you able to talk about the sort of support Maggie's can offer, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those that don't know, we are a network of centres across the UK. I believe we now have 27, but I may have got that wrong by 1. There's a few opened while I was on leave last year. So you can come into any centre. It doesn't need to be your local one. If you're visiting a friend or family and then they have one nearby, you can go into that centre. You can find your local centre by going on our website. If you can't get to a centre, we do have an online programme of support on offer as well. So we will always find the best centre to support you, whether that be in person or online. You can email us the inquiries line, and again, they'll put you in touch with your nearest centre, or phone us as well. When you come into the centre, everything that we offer is free. We have an evidence-based programme of support that includes many different things, such as support groups, mental wellbeing sessions like mindfulness and relaxation, Tai Chi and yoga, and more of your practical sessions as well, like benefits advice, will writing, exercise, makeup and skincare workshops and these kind of things. So please do pop into your local centre if you have one near you, and if not, just get in touch with us on the inquiries line and we'll do what we can to make sure we can support you in the best way possible.
Oh, thank you so much, Tara. And as a reminder, all this information will be emailed to you following the webinar. Just noticed a few comments in the box there, Tara. Your grounding exercise has gone down a right treat, so people have really enjoyed doing that, so thank you once again.
Oh, good. Thank you.
That's all right. Now, at the beginning of the session, you may remember we mentioned peer support and asked whether you had received any. And I think the majority of people had said that no, they perhaps hadn't. So we know connecting with others and finding a community can be difficult, which is why we decided to create circles here at Pancreatic Cancer UK. So, circles. What is circles? Good question. Circles is our peer-to-peer support groups for people like you to connect with others sharing similar experience. The groups are online, it's WhatsApp or Facebook, and you can join a dedicated WhatsApp group for people from today's session. And if it was the Facebook group that you preferred, you just have to let us know and we can arrange that for you. So who was in the group with me? Well, after this webinar, you'll be able to join the group with those who signed up, so that you can connect with others and share your experiences. You could do that after the webinar if you so wish. Okay, peer-to-peer support is really crucial, isn't it? Any thoughts on that, Tara?
Yeah, I can't believe I didn't mention it more. I'm so sorry for not highlighting it. So thank you for highlighting it, Lea, after we spoke. That is one of the biggest sort of support methods I would advocate anyone going to. And group support can feel a bit daunting, and potentially for some people it might feel a bit self-conscious, or have preconceived ideas of what that might be like. But I would really encourage, if you can, and there's a group that you can get to nearby, whether it's like a friends and family group or a general cancer support group or a pancreatic specific support group, I would really encourage trying to get to one, because again, that's a great coping strategy for your mental well-being, is having that sense of connectedness and being with others who understand. And like Simon was saying earlier, and I think I said as well, we often hold back what we want to share or how we're really feeling from a protective perspective, and with our loved ones. Go into a group or being with others who are in a similar situation allows you to be truly open about how you're feeling, and get that reassurance from someone else that gets it, because they're in that position. So I would always advocate trying some form of support group or group activity if you can.
And those in-face support groups could be something like Men's Shed, or you now do Women's Sheds. Some you can have a look for that online, and we can post those as well.
Yeah.
Something I refer to. So we've also got a short video to play about circles, which we'll show you now.
Are you currently affected by pancreatic cancer? Want to chat to others who just get it? You're not alone. Circles is a place where you can connect with a supportive community. A place to share the highs, a place to share the lows, and everything in between. With people who understand. With people who just get it. Sign up to Circles, your community space.
Okay. Here's a couple of quotes from current users of Circles and what they think about connecting with each other. When you have a look for Circles online or after today on the link provided, there are groups currently at the moment which are also available, and not necessarily the one from tonight, but there's like the 3 a.m. club for those people that struggle to sleep, which affects your well-being. There's friends and family group and diagnosed group, obviously. So please feel free to have a look. So hopefully that's been useful in understanding more about Circles. And as we mentioned, if you're interested in joining Circles following this session, we'll share the information with you this evening via email. And there's a link in there as well in the chat. Okay, I think we've gone through quite a bit today, this evening, in this very short space of time. I think it's, emotional well-being and your overall well-being, they're interlinked. Your physical well-being and all of the ways in which you are remaining well. So, we're here to offer support, and it's been so great hearing from Simon and Tara. But I wonder whether you have any questions, and I wonder if now is the right time to go to the Q&A. And if you haven't put a question in the Q&A already, please, feel free to do so. We've got one that we can get started with if Tara and Simon are ready.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Kamal. Kamal asks, how can I cope with change in my mum's condition as she develops symptoms? I'm finding it hard to adjust and cope with the change.
Shall I take that one to begin with, Tara? That's a great question, Kamal, and thank you for posing such an honest question as well. I think there are various ways we can sort of advise you that might help. Firstly, is to reiterate that you can call us, you can WhatsApp us, you can email us, and we can talk through with you what you're experiencing alongside your mum and what that might mean and how you can support her, but also care for yourself in terms of dealing with how that makes you feel. There are lots of physical symptoms which can happen with pancreatic cancer. They don't always, but they can. So things like pain, nausea, digestive problems. I don't know if your mum is taking Creon, for example, to help her with her food, and how her fatigue can affect people, lack of sleep. There is so much that can happen to somebody. It's almost not useful to list them all. It's perhaps more helpful to have a general idea, and so I would encourage you, if you feel up to it, is perhaps give us a call and we can go through that with you. We also have lots of resources on the Pancreatic Cancer UK website, which will give you some things you can read. There are other webinars on there around sort of symptoms and symptom management that might be useful for you to watch. I'd also say having the right health professionals around your mum to support her is really important, particularly if she's at home and you're helping her. I don't know enough about your mum's situation to kind of say too much, but if you're worried that your mum is deteriorating and changing, then it's whether you have somebody like a community nurse or even a palliative care team around you that can help you make sense of what's happening and help you understand what she's going through and how best to help her. Things like medicines, for example, but certainly talking, from my experience, tweaking medicines is one part of it, but helping you understand what's going on, as you've kind of put in your question, helping you come to terms with what's happening is really important. So I'd encourage you to perhaps reach out to us, but also if you don't have that support at home, is asking for it. And again, we can point you in the right direction if you need.
Thank you, Simon. There are no questions in the Q&A box at the moment. So if there is anything you'd like to ask or you'd like further information on anything we've spoken about earlier throughout the session, please, don't hesitate, open up the Q&A box and pop your questions in there. We'll give it a couple of minutes, and you all seem to be a little bit shy, perhaps, in us coming forward with the questions, but that's fine if that's the way. Sometimes the questions, we might have answered that in the session earlier, perhaps inadvertently.
I think just going on Kamal's question and furthering what Simon was saying, from the sort of emotional, how that emotionally feels, sort of coping with the constant changes, it can be really easy to start getting overwhelmed and feeling anxious with every new change that's happening, and possibly then start to feel anxious when the phone rings or you're going for an appointment because what's gonna be next might come up. So I would suggest trying to, again, what we said earlier, sort of focus on what you can control, but also name what's happening. Sometimes just naming the fact that, and saying out loud, I feel really anxious because this has changed again, or this thing is now happening. It almost gives it, or will give, some validation to the fact that actually this is a significant thing happening, and there's a reason why you feel anxious about the change that's happening and the fact that changes keep happening. Doing sort of those grounding techniques can then be really helpful. If you notice that feeling of anxiety is starting to build, bring it back to a grounding technique. You might find there's loads of ones online that you can find if that one doesn't work for you. And I would, if you've not tried it, mindfulness can be a really, really helpful tool. And if you've not got one nearby, a class nearby that you can go to, or Maggie's nearby that you can go to, there's a really, really helpful app called Smiling Mind, which is free. and it's amazing for practicing mindfulness. It's got really, that is great for beginners, great for experienced people as well. But it's got absolutely loads of resources on there, all free, really easy to access.
That's great. Yeah, thanks.
Just to add something, Lee, was in terms of managing any symptom, but particularly physical symptoms, it's do it sooner rather than later. Don't wait until symptoms become severe. So if things are starting to happen, then you seek help sooner rather than later. From, I suppose, again, from a palliative care background, so I would be looking at helping people with symptom management. It's an easier thing to do if you do it before things become severe and really difficult. And that is the same for your emotional well-being as well, is not holding all that back until you hit a crisis. If you're starting to struggle, it's reaching out for support sooner rather than later. And then people can come alongside you before it becomes too big and overwhelming.
No, yeah, absolutely. Another question come from an anonymous attendee. They said that they'd like to find a face-to-face group with people in my situation. Where do I start to look? My nearest Maggie's is in Oxford, but it's an hour drive away. They can't drive at the moment because of the surgery and pain meds. And any suggestions where to start?
Tricky. I mean, you can try local libraries and community centres can be really good sources for kind of group support. Whether or not you find a specific pancreatic support group is probably less likely, but there might be groups for people with cancer in general or dealing with illness. So I would always try your local community hubs. Lea mentioned men's sheds and women's sheds earlier. They can also be really helpful. Often there can be groups within them. I know our men's sheds around where I am, they all do totally different things. And Facebook can be, not Facebook groups as such, but putting out into Facebook community pages, does anyone know of a support group nearby, face-to-face support group? That might be, I don't know if you use Facebook, but that might be an option as well for finding a face-to-face group. I'm trying to think if I know of any sort of, there can be sort of small independent charities that won't have the same kind of space on Google as Maggie's and Pancreatic Cancer UK, but there are around the country lots of very small independent cancer support charities that do similar things. So there may be something nearby to where you are. I'm not sure in what direction of an hour of Oxford you are, but it might be worth looking at sort of Googling Cancer Support Centre in your area. There might be something that you've not heard of just because it doesn't have the same kind of, it's not as big as Maggie's and pancreatic cancer.
Absolutely. Okay. And seeing the GP as well. GP sometimes has resources for support as well as Macmillan centres that are often found in where you've had your surgery, perhaps. There might be a Macmillan centre there, or the nurse specialist, asking the nurse specialist as well for the support that might be available via groups that you could join or if appropriate. Now, I can see there's still there's one question and a couple in the chat box. So I'm going to go against protocol and actually ask them from the chat box, if that's okay. But because there are a few questions and we do want to answer these, so do stay on the webinar if you'd like to hear that. But as we're nearing 7 o'clock, I'd like to, we've passed it. I'd like to say a really big thank you to Simon and Tara for their input this evening and sharing such useful guidance with us, and to Lynn, who has been supporting behind the scenes too. I'd also like to say thank you to you all for taking the time to join us this evening. As we've mentioned earlier, myself, Simon and Lynn all work on Pancreatic Cancer UK's support line, so please do call or email us if you'd like to chat about your personal situation more, or WhatsApp. So, another anonymous attendee, but as much as I'm grateful for the speed of my treatment, I also felt that I was not in control of everything, as I had been before diagnosis. Scan appointments, etc., came through so quickly. I actually felt quite angry. Is this a normal reaction? Simon, do you want to start off?
Go on, Simon.
I think anger is an emotion that we hear a lot, and I'd echo what Tara said at the start in terms of normal. I don't think it's always helpful to think in terms of what's normal, because actually it's what you feel that's important, and there's a validity to what you feel. And actually, if that whole process has left you feeling exasperated and angry, then it is understandable, because you are swept along, and that loss of control is scary. It makes you feel fearful, and if you feel fearful, then you can feel angry as well, because you're not able to control this thing that is kind of taking you away from what used to be a position of control over your life, where you knew what you were doing and where you were going and what time, and you could control that, and you could book your diary and do it. And now you can't, because somebody else is doing that for you. So I think to feel angry in that situation makes sense, and is understandable. But yeah, I think it's trying to avoid the word normal, because I don't think it's always helpful, because it can take away from what you're feeling if you're trying to fit it into what everybody else feels. It's actually more important what you feel.
Anything you wanted to add, Tara? Thank you, Simon.
No, I just echo everything Simon said, and I think, you have to allow yourself time and space to feel what emotion is coming up for you. And if at this point in time that's anger, it's acknowledging that, again, naming it, how that makes you feel physically. And then once you start to notice how that's making you feel physically, you might be able to start thinking about what you can do to help manage that anger. What can you do to help simmer it and make yourself feel better? But for now, I'd say allow yourself to feel it, and as I say, name it, and then you can start to move forward with the next emotion.
Absolutely, thanks. So Roxana has asked in the chat how to contact palliative team. My mum has pancreatic cancer stage 4, and the GP doesn't know how to manage her. Simon?
Okay. Yeah. If your mum is at home, Roxana, then it would be a community palliative care team, and your GP should be able to refer you to that team. So your GP, even though if you're saying your GP is struggling to support your mum, your GP should still know where the palliative care team is based. It varies across the country. Palliative care teams are often associated with hospices, so it's just to be aware of that. I worked for a hospice when I was a palliative care specialist nurse, and that's quite common. So it's understand that that's the case. It doesn't mean that if you have involvement from a palliative care team in your home from a hospice that they're going to try and take you to a hospice. If they've got a dedicated community team, that's exactly what they're there to do, is to support you and your mum where she is. But your GP should know. District nurses, if you've got them involved, they should also know who the palliative care team is in your area. And if you really get stuck, if you go back to the hospital, if you've still got contact with the specialist nurse there, they should also know who the community palliative care team is.
Brilliant, thank you. Amanda's put a question, how do I cope with the delays of treatment, etc., and information for my mother when pancreatic cancer is so fast moving?
I guess the delays in treatment is a really difficult thing to cope with. And I guess it's understanding why the delays are there. So in some ways, it's talking to the team that are looking after your mum to understand if there are delays, what the cause is. Sometimes those delays are unfortunately necessary, and it's having somebody to explain to you why perhaps it feels like it's slow. So I'd encourage you to ask those questions to try and get the answers. What was the other part to that, Lee?
Right,
things changing very quickly.
And yeah, when pancreatic cancer is so fast moving.
Again, there's information on the website, but that is something that we can help you with on the support line, because these are conversations that we have frequently, because, as we said right at the start, it's one of real issues with pancreatic cancer is that things can move very quickly, and it's very hard to almost keep ahead of that curve, if you will, to try and plan ahead if you possibly can, and trying to be one step ahead can be really hard. So if you're feeling that way and you feel up to talking to somebody, I'd encourage you to give us a call, because in order to answer your question, it's helpful if we understand a little bit more of exactly what's happening to your mum that's making you feel like it's fast. Because depending what's happening will help us understand what may or may not be coming next, and how we can then explain that to you, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. A quick question for Tara. Well, not quick, but a question for Tara. Kim has asked, is it too late to ask for support on bereavement after many years? I've not dealt with what happened and still feel angry, etc. with what happened.
Yes, absolutely. Excuse me, absolutely. I did reply to Kim in the box when I saw Maggie's, but yeah, just for everyone, if you didn't see, you can absolutely access Maggie's. We support friends and family through grief, and there's no time limit on support at Maggie's. So absolutely, just find your nearest centre and come in. And if there isn't one near you, we do offer bereavement support online as well.
Lovely, thank you. I didn't see your reply in the chat. Okay. I do apologise. So we have run over a little bit, and I must apologise for that as well. But on behalf of myself and the team at Pancreatic Cancer UK, thank you so much for coming, and we hope it's been useful for you, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your evening. And once again, thank you to Tara and Simon and everybody working in the background here. Bye.